call upon Elizabeth. After suitably stalking Elizabeth after seeing one of her presentations, she was so kind and so gracious to agree to come and talk to us here at Lean in Higher Education. So Elizabeth Beattie is going to talk to us about the human-centred change at University of New South Wales, a minimum viable change approach to AI transformation. So Elizabeth, Program Change Lead for the AI and Innovation Enablement Program at University of New South Wales. She'll deliver us a compelling narrative that blends personal experience, practical experimentation, and strategic insight into leading change in higher education. And this keynote will explore how minimum viable change approach can guide transformation with empathy, agility, and purpose. And Elizabeth will draw on her deep expertise in digital transformation, operating model transitions, and human-centered design, bringing a wealth of experience in shaping culture, capability, and adoption strategies. And we'll get to play in Miro too, bringing participants to real-world change challenges for a collaboration discussion following the session. Elizabeth, without further ado, over to you.
Thanks, Kate. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Great. And can you see my screen?
We can.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Thank you. I'm going to tell you a bit of a story today, which is, I guess, a change method that I like to use. So I joined UNSW in early 2024 to lead the change for our AI and innovation programs. So I wanted to share a methodology, a different way of thinking about how we've used human-centered and minimum viable change processes to roll out AI tools in a way that's inclusive, ethical, and sustainable. We're trying to meet people where they're at and take feedback along the way. The presentation is quite change focused, but I'm hoping it's applicable to anybody who's involved in transformation as a leader or a sponsor, a project lead, or continuous improvement, or even a recipient, and all of us are. As Kate mentioned, I'm not actually using Miro at the end, but it'd be great to have some interaction. So if you feel like introducing yourself in the chat, tell us your biggest challenge or top priority with respect to change or AI. It would be great at the end of the session to unpack some of those challenges. Please also feel free to post questions in the chat. I will pause along the way to take them. So, how did I get hooked using lean, human-centered, and agile change processes in my practice? Well, my passion was first sparked when I undertook design thinking training many years ago. It was actually led by our next speaker, Peter Brad, who is now at Miro, and we've been friends for many years. This was part of an in-house innovation program, and whilst I like the concepts like customer value proposition, 5 whys, and how might we, I just couldn't see the application in my everyday work. A short while after, I was inspired by a presentation from the Agile Change Leadership Institute called Design Thinking Meets Change Management, and I learned there's an opportunity to use D-School's 5 thinking design steps as change capabilities via a feedback-driven and human-centered approach to create desirable outcomes for our customers. And the customers, in my case, are staff and ultimately students. It helps everyone shift their mindset and nudges us to think differently. So the framework helps us to develop human-centered solutions. Change tools can be aligned to each phase. So we start with empathize, which involves deep engagement. For example, I use tools like empathy maps and personas rather than traditional impact assessments to gather data about an end user's point of view and I will talk through some of these later using Miro, as you can see. Define could utilize journey maps or other research methods to unpack the current state. Look at pain points and also look for new opportunities to transform. There's a wealth of possibilities in Ideate. My favourite is lean coffee, which I understand you may have undertaken yesterday, or brainstorming and affinity mapping to create your thoughts. Prototype is where you might conduct an experiment or co-create an artifact, like the future changescape, which is a tool to help envisage the future state where you want to go, or the change canvas, which can create alignment for your vision and how you might get there. And testing involves the feedback phase with your users. So test and learn helps us gather new insights or data on your minimum viable product. For example, I like to pilot approaches such as a training session or a small scale rollout. It might involve failure, which is an opportunity to learn. So after drawing the connection between design thinking and change management, I did a lot of learning through the Agile Change Leadership Institute. ACLI takes a capability approach to change and advocates that there are 3 core change capabilities: continuous engagement, communication, and data-informed decision-making, shown here on the Venn diagram. And there are many techniques that change practitioners can utilise for each capability. The theory is you examine each change on its merits and then ascertain the jobs to be done to achieve the agreed outcomes. This can pivot as each change initiative progresses and more insights come to light. I believe that this approach can be applied to any change or any framework wherever you are. In fact, I've started to use the change capabilities in my community learning approach as well. So why does human change matter? Well, human-centered change. AI is a technology rollout, but it's also a transformation in how we work. In order to be successful, we need mindset shifts, uplift capabilities, and embed cultural change. It means engaging with people deeply, understanding their needs, and co-creating the future with them. Human-centered design is one of the core capabilities within my function. As Kate mentioned, I'm in the innovation function. I'm responsible for leading the AI and human-centered design capability uplift. So it's really important that I role model these approaches in my everyday work. So I work hard to bring together human-centered design, agile change, and lean. For me, it was a no-brainer to use a human-centric approach to focus on engagement, dialogue, and sense-making to help drive the transformation that I'm leading. To use co-creation techniques with our leaders, team members, and other stakeholders to get buy-in. There's a fair amount of skepticism about AI, quite rightly. So to be successful, we need to create a positive learning journey and to guide the change journey in a human-centered way. It's not simply about communications and training. We need new process, capability uplift, and cultural shifts to support that new technology tool. So we focus on experimentation, testing, and learning from each other. We really want to support our people to upskill, and everybody responds differently. Engagement and feedback are critical so that we can utilize the feedback and insights to drive the change. We've made mistakes along the way, but there needs to be an opportunity to learn. Just pause for a minute to see if there are any questions.
Not yet, Elizabeth.
Not yet? Okay. Happy if anyone wants to put their hand up. So I use what is known as the minimum viable change process to drive my work. Many of you might be familiar with this approach as it is embedded in lean thinking. It's also a play on the minimum viable product concept, and you can align this process with any project methodology. The one I have on the slide is just an example. Essentially, we look to release small changes regularly to meet customer needs, to seek feedback on them to help future changes, and ideally achieve some quick wins. It's lean, it's agile, and it's responsive. Even if the wins are not achieved, we receive valuable feedback along the way through change experiments. We work in iterative cycles where we plan, deploy, reflect, and learn from the insights we receive. This eliminates waste from the process, as you only undertake those activities that you need in the moment. All change is different, and we need to use a beginner's mindset when planning change rather than a consistent approach for every change. A key component is regular collaboration and engagement, including transparent collaboration, communication, supporting alignment. So this mitigates the risks and the surprises because we can adapt to them as they arise. Essentially, we're responding to people's reaction to change rather than just managing it. The more engagement that you do, the less resistance there is. An individual's response to change doesn't have to be seen as resistance. It can be a valuable input into the change journey. So there's an opportunity to lean into that positive dialogue, to take on board some feedback and work with impacted employees to co-create the change. It's action biased because you're engaging in that change regularly in order to understand it. Essentially, what we're doing is plan, deploy, reflect, and learn. So back to UNSW, what I did was to chunk the change down into bite-sized chunks and use the ACLI capabilities as my compass and worked out what we needed to achieve in each phase. We're a lean team, so the approach worked well. And in the end, through my engagement, I built a large community, which I'll tell you about in a minute. Rather than spending the first few months analysing and planning, I started aligning, running experiments, etc., to gain feedback. We use this approach through our pilots, but we're also planning an upcoming rollout, 10,000 licenses, which I believe is the largest in the Southern Hemisphere within higher ed, which is exciting. We've also used a minimum viable readiness approach, which I'll talk about shortly, and we've piloted it on our first 200 to test and learn. So I want to share some of the tools that I've used to make it really practical today. The first one is the stakeholder ecosystem map, which is a tool that's borrowed from Lean Change. Early at the program, and then at regular intervals, we mapped out the interested stakeholders and ascertained their role in the program. We looked at key characteristics, including degree of impact, influence, and support. Preparing a stakeholder map was really helpful for social architecture analysis. The social architecture of an organisation recognises that change happens in communities and networks, not just in org charts. So what you do is you identify the communities that can really make change happen and look for opportunities to create connection. Identify those key influencers who can champion change for everyone else and bring them on the journey. Some say you only need to influence 3% of your workforce and they will reach the remaining 85% for you. So we wanted to ensure we're working with early adopters who are willing to experiment, share their lessons, including failures. Some were asked to participate in our early pilots, which we've run over the last 12 to 18 months. They later became community of practice leaders for our broader rollout. There were some key stakeholders who weren't involved the way we wanted them to be, so we looked for opportunities to rope them in. After doing stakeholder analysis, we realised that there are some groups that we didn't really understand. So we decided to create personas. Personas are a critical part of assessing impact and another tool borrowed from design thinking. You may know that personas are fictional characters based on research to represent user types. So they help us gain a deeper understanding and so we can create a more aligned solution. Essentially, it's an opportunity to understand the impact of AI on user groups so that we can determine the support required in terms of tools and training, etc. We really unpacked how these groups might use AI, their experience, their goals, their pains, etc. It was another community engagement opportunity, fostering collaboration. And we used the outputs to determine a support model so that we can meet their needs. We also developed empathy maps out of the same workshops. So empathy mapping is one step further than personas and looks at how people are thinking, feeling, saying, and doing. The information we gained helped plan our capability uplift and our adoption approach. So an empathy map can be created in situ with employees, and it's an opportunity to express their point of view. So what were they seeing? Well, AI is taking people's jobs. What were they hearing? AI is cheating, particularly in higher ed. What were they thinking and feeling? How do I learn this skill so that I can use this ethically? I'm really afraid of making a mistake. What were they doing? Well, some of them were avoiding us because they didn't want to be involved. The workshop fostered diverse perspectives, and even the quietest person in the room had a voice. The outputs were rich in detail. We used those outputs to build a learning plan so that we could meet their expectations for capability uplift. We also ran regular retrospectives on the proof of concepts to ascertain their suitability and feedback from our users. So essentially they're a data gathering exercise, but they're far more effective than surveys because people are willing to give their feedback in the moment and you can unpack it and have that conversation. I was looking to gauge feedback on desirability, viability, and feasibility and input for the rollout strategy. And I used the sailboat methodology and kind of put my own twist on it. So we looked at wind. What was your favorite feature and what would you miss if that tool was blown away? Sun was success. How do we embed this into our daily routine? The reef was risks that could jeopardize future implementation, and the anchor were the frustrations that dragged us down. So we used the process to capture use cases, and we used those use cases for developing our business case and later our learning journey, along with personas that we should be recruiting for our next phase. Just pause for a minute. Does anyone want to? Can't see the chat, but happy to answer any questions.
No questions in the chat yet, Elizabeth.
Okay. So as we start to plan our rollout, we had to move at speed. As I said, we'd purchased 10,000 licenses and wanted to roll them out as quickly as possible as demand was high. So what we did was we looked at the concept of minimum viable readiness, which is another strategic change concept adapted from the startup world's minimum viable product. It refers to the lightest, most essential set of conditions needed to begin a rollout, engagement, or transformation without waiting for perfection. So what we're doing here is to use minimum viable readiness to accelerate our tools rollout, but while ensuring that the key ethical, cultural, and capability foundations are in place. It's about starting with enough, but not everything. So how did we determine this? Well, we looked at what the non-negotiables were from a people perspective, and these essentially formed the baseline conditions for our rollout. There were obviously other factors like technical and business readiness that we had to bear in mind. But what we focused on were ethical usage, human-centered AI, leadership, mindset, and baseline literacy. Momentum beats readiness every time. You don't need the whole ritual, you just need enough. So just touching on these key elements briefly. So we've embedded ethical usage from the outset of our AI journey, ensuring that every pilot, platform, and decision reflects our core values of responsibility, inclusion, and long-term trust. We have key ethical principles, including transparency. So AI decisions must be explainable and interpretable. Human oversight is important. So AI should support, not replace, human judgment. privacy and data protection. Personal and sensitive data must be handled with care and consent. Bias and fairness. Systems must be inclusive and free from discriminatory bias. And accountability. So everyone owns their own use of AI, and we need to ensure that monitoring is in place and that things are free from harm. So we've created ethical principles on the use of AI, as well as an AI assurance framework, which is a self-assessment tool I designed and is a foundational piece of our capability uplift approach. Now, human-centered AI is another important factor. So it's an emerging field that seeks to align the development of artificial intelligence with human values and needs, rather than prioritizing efficiency and problem solving. So we believe that AI should enhance human intelligence rather than replace them. So we need to reframe our relationship with AI to be more collaborative, responsible, and human-centered. Human-centered design is essential to ensure that AI achieves its social benefits. Designers must consider broad societal impacts rather than just immediate needs. And we need to ensure that there are diverse teams designing applications and maintain alignment with organisational standards. So the role of leadership is another critical factor, and we believe it's essential in that leaders set the tone for adoption and are expected to role model ethical and sustainable AI use. Their visible sponsorship, ethical role modelling, and willingness to learn publicly builds trust across the university and helps reduce fear, creating that psychological safety for experimentation, encouraging capability uplift, and modelling curiosity. So we want them to help teams navigate change with confidence. We want them to lead the way to becoming a practitioner, an AI practitioner, through experimentation, and share their struggles through a bit of vulnerability by being transparent. So we had some really senior leaders on our early pilots, and when they came to community sessions and talked about the struggles that they were having with the various tools, this was immensely powerful for other people in the room who were also struggling. Our leadership group champions our AI for all vision, not just as an IT initiative, but it's a shared responsibility through ownership of all elements of the rollout, including key messages. Mindset is the final piece of our minimum viable readiness puzzle and how we position it in our culture. So we wanted to ensure that our change journey was not just operational, but cultural. So we tried to build resilience, trust, and mindset from the start. We spoke openly in our onboarding sessions about the importance of role modelling, curiosity, and experimentation. We shined a light on psychological safety so that we could create those safe spaces for learning, embracing that beginner's mindset, facilitating champion networks to uplift others and fostering inclusive engagement, encouraging participants to fail if needed and share their learnings, ensuring that there were cultural anchors in place, and also a critical part of our leadership onboarding process. Baseline AI literacy was also an underpinning feature of our program that we piloted very early before we even chose any tools. So we're using the 70-20-10 learning model, which talks about 10% formal learning, 20% peer-based learning, and 70% on-the-job experimentation. And I created a framework to draw out these key elements. So I actually used a bunch of the change tools I'd learned with my capability approach. For example, I talked about personas before, but what I actually did was created learning personas for the different levels of capability of where our staff were at. So this was based on the 70-20-10 learning model, and we had novice, experimenter, and expert personas. We used some Gartner research, and then this helped us pitch our AI literacy. For a bit of fun, I actually created a podcast to showcase my persona, which I can share later if we have time. When I commenced our pilot, I also ran a Futurespective, which was looking to inspire participants with their goals. So I asked them to consider I like, I wish, what if, which is another design thinking tool to facilitate transparent communication. We encouraged them to set objectives for where they wanted to be in terms of their capability. And again, we ran this in an open forum so everybody could share their hopes and fears and try and build scaffolding around them. Some of the leaders jumped straight in, which helped the rest of the people in the room feel safe to open up. Data was something else that we have a strong focus on. We collected it on everything. So tools, rollout approach, time saved, use cases. And we did this through pulse checks, surveys, retros, and then shared the data at regular showcases, etc., including our learning. And here's another example. And lean coffees, which you all know about, I'm sure. So we use these to experiment with during our pilot. Lean coffee is a structured but agendaless meeting, agendaless forum, for open dialogue. So this simple tool helped us unpack what they wanted to discuss in terms of AI and where they needed help. So in our case, it boosted engagement and helped drive the content for training and coaching down the track. Didn't think that this was necessarily going to be successful, but we had strong attendance with 40 plus people turning up to our lean coffees and really helped build that concept of psychological safety and peer learning. And it wasn't long before I wasn't doing any facilitating and our champions were doing all the talking, which was great because they were far more advanced than what I was. Still am, in fact. So we had a very broad lens on engagement, encompassing all elements of our program. We established an AI ecosystem, which included 5 working groups of in excess of 100 leaders and influencers. They met on a monthly basis to drive the program and collaborate on the various elements. We also established an advice panel that innovators can come to for support. So it's called SOS, which is Solve, Opportunity, Share. I call it a shark tank without the teeth because people are there to actually help you rather than to scare you off. Through our communities of practice, we built a coalition of early adopters, academics, legal professionals, technologists and leaders who help shape the rollout. And this is where the magic of innovation really comes alive and plays a key part of how we explore, try to make us fun and help people learn. It was also fundamental to peer-led learning, so showcasing use cases, successes and failures. And we learn that value isn't always in hitting perfect or in generating success, but in about creating momentum. Our champions were a key enabler of our pilots. Essentially, they are trusted, experienced and well-connected individuals across faculties and divisions who lead the adoption of AI tools within their areas. We need them to be our first point of contact for their teams, answering questions, reinforcing key messages, capturing feedback. And we're going to ask them to man hypercare within their teams when we go broad. Post-rollout, we'll be working with them to help build awareness, understanding and community engagement. It's a collective journey that we're on together. So we're looking for volunteers to take on this role as early adopters and help within their teams. And we'll support them through train the trainer sessions, use case workshops, a dedicated Teams channel, and essentially they will be our partners to lead, support and collaborate with our stakeholder network, building building engagement and continuous improvement and helping people feel safe. So as part of our rollout planning, we used a human-centered approach based on faculty-specific diagnostics. And we started with a readiness assessment and a change journey so that we could co-create essentially the change experience that each faculty or division wanted for their particular areas. So we use visual roadmaps, a readiness diagnostic to gauge sentiment, and the plan is to use sliders to look at goals and what's important, along with a leader's toolkit to help set the scene. As part of our approach to scale, we used our IT business partners to be our change leaders, and we equipped them to help design that journey with our customers. The speed at which we are working means that many of our interventions planned won't be implemented until post go live, which is kind of the opposite of what you want, but it is what it is. We're trying to be pragmatic, but we'll do a lot of these things in our enablement phase after we've launched. So we're trying to use simple playbooks, quick start guides, basic templates, etc., so that it's self-service and accessible to our customers and to our change leaders and champions. So in terms of our learnings, AI is very unpredictable. And that's why human-centered design is the anchor. We've learned that people want to do the right thing, but they don't always know how. Mistakes are not normally malicious, and that's why we need psychological safety and ethical scaffolding. We do need to meet people where they're at in terms of capability, ethics, mindset, and desire, which is why we've taken a human-centered approach. People need different levels of help, and not everyone even understands what is responsible and what could be a mistake. We need to ensure that ethical considerations are proactively integrated and not retrofitted. Our key capability uplift needs to start simple and build on it, and provide opportunities to experiment real time. We did over-engineer a few things. We designed an in-house course, which was amazing, but it was just too much for people to absorb, so we had to scale it back. And this really led to the realization that minimum viable readiness is a critical part of our journey, and that we need to work with our communities to help us scale. And data, as I've said today, we're capturing data on everything: best practices, user insights, different stages of learning, documenting lessons learned from our pilots so that we can avoid mistakes going forward and build our institutional knowledge. So just coming back, at some point in my learning journey, I became a lean change agent. A lean change approach blends agile, lean startup, and modern change practices to create a more inclusive and adaptive change practice. So the timing for me was perfect, although I didn't actually plan it, to be honest. I'd just been wanting to do it for years, but found myself on the bench. So I took the time to do the course. The Lean 5 Universals of Change, developed by Jason Little, are foundational principles that guide adaptive and human-centered change practices. And they shift our approach from rigid planning and control to co-creation, experimentation, and responsiveness. And they're closely aligned to the work that I've been doing. So I wanted to share them with you today, just as part of my wrap-up. So cause and purpose over urgency for change. We spent many months aligning people through experimentation before we were ready to roll out. Co-creation over getting buy-in through coercion. Likewise, our tools and our rollout approaches were shaped by those who joined us on the early learning journey. Experimentation over executing tasks in a plan. Throughout our rollout, we experimented with lots of different approaches, which I've talked about today, to help ascertain the path forward, allowing for learning and adaptation as the change unfolds. Meaningful dialogue over broadcasting information. Our communities really helped us uncover insights, build trust, and address concerns. And finally, response to change over blaming resistance. We see resistance as valuable feedback, not a problem to overcome. So hence we asked for feedback at every step of the way. And that was really all that I wanted to share today. But keen to take questions and have a facilitated discussion. If anyone would like to share any challenges, we can tap into the group intelligence.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Yes, still as good second time round, some of that content that was in your first slide. So thank you so much for presenting for us today. We do have a couple of items in the chat, which I'll talk through. So Bill from the US has said, I really like your talk, reminding me of the important respect for people pillar of lean. And it was a really nice balanced approach, and I would agree. And Melissa has a question here. What do you envisage that as a steady state looks like?
Oh, that's a good question. And to be honest, I don't actually know. I mean, at the moment, we're rolling out tools. We're trying to enable everyone at the university, all staff initially at the university to upskill and experiment. And that's the focus for 2025. I mean, 2026, it won't be a steady state because we'll be looking at whether we want to roll out to students. We'll be looking at moving into agentic AI because we've barely touched on that, looking for process improvements. And I was really fascinated by the talk that preceded me because that's a whole new area for me. Honestly, I don't think there ever is a steady state in higher ed because there's just so much change coming. And we've just finished preparing and it's going through socialization, our technology strategy, which is going to involve another transformation agenda. So I think, you know, digital literacy, bringing ourselves up to speed on some of these tools, feeling comfortable with the unknown. To be honest, that's probably the steady state.
Unsteady. Steady state is unsteady. The only constant is change, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Well, you're doing brilliantly. Chris has also said that he really likes this as well, particularly around resistance as a form of communication. And I think anyone who's had children probably knows that one very well as well.
Yes, I do have a couple of them. Maybe I need to take my own advice.
It's hard to apply to home life sometimes, isn't it?
Yep.
Elizabeth, I had a question. So it sounds like University of New South Wales has a really decent tolerance for experimentation and potential failure, which is great. And is there any secret method to that from your experience in terms of has your leadership undergone any special type of training, or is it just that continual generation of your communities and your champions and that psychological safety that's got you to that point?
So we have started, but certainly it's in early days, a human-centered design capability uplift. And the exciting thing is bringing that together actually with AI because it's such an important part of that. I think certainly a bit of courage is involved. So I think if you're being transparent about the fact that you're experimenting and that you are sharing the early failures so that you can actually pivot and improve the situation, I think that helps, but it does certainly take courage. Yeah, I think it just comes down to I'm sure everyone would know here that collaboration is such a critical part of change in higher ed. And so I think as long as you keep that collaboration open, bring people on the journey, I think it is foreign, but people are happy to participate in that journey because you are sort of being open about what you're doing and why, and you pivot.
And even in the previous session, there is this definite desire and interest around AI. People want to know, well, more often than not, people want to know more about it, want to learn how to use it. So that I'm sure that does help as well. I was really compelled by your statement regarding if you can influence 3% of your staff, they can potentially inform the rest. Have you found that tracks true with your experience?
I mean, I think so. I mean, I don't have data for this journey except for my pilots because we haven't rolled out yet. We're not rolling out to the 10,000 until November. But certainly,
okay.
yeah, November. We don't have an announced date yet, but it'll be November.
November. I know that one, Elizabeth. Yeah.
Certainly in the pilot, I mean, it has been our champions who have started to embrace. And I think part of the reason why we're moving so fast and we've taken the minimum viable readiness is because there's so much excitement. And, that's not because of the work that I've done, because, we have a team now, but it's our champions and our people on the ground in the faculties and the divisions who are sharing the news, who are sharing that excitement. There are studies. The concept of social architecture comes from a researcher by the name of Luke Gallopin. I think he's Swedish, actually. And so there is research around that. My knowledge is really only anecdotal.
Yes. Oh no, that's good. Melissa has said that she loves all of these concepts, and I know, Melissa, you're a human-centered design person, so it makes sense. And Elizabeth, what has surprised you most about the journey so far?
That's a good question. I think it was actually probably the willingness of our leaders to really embrace the learning and the discomfort with that. Because, I guess organization structures are often very hierarchical, and it's not necessarily easy to embrace the challenge and going back to beginner. So having that mindset and having to shift from expert to beginner is challenging. But we've had a lot of leaders who have openly done that, and that has really made it successful. So you never know whether these concepts are going to resonate, but they certainly did.
It's a really nice feeling, isn't it? When you have that level of success, just to get you started and gives you that momentum. Bill has said here he appreciates that University of New South Wales allow you to experiment, and he has heard more than once, why you're experimenting, doesn't this stuff work? And consultants may be less likely to say experiments are needed so that they get the contract. So it's good. I mean, certainly.
You can't plan any change because every change is different. You've got different people, you've got different constraints, you're trying to change different things. So to say that there is one size fits all just isn't the case. And the thing is, you've got to. I guess it's a no-brainer with AI because it is new. So you can't. To experiment just seems the natural thing to do, but you need to be able to pivot, I guess, if it's the wrong move, and then move forward and learn.
Okay. And Sally has asked what tool you're actually rolling out, if you're able to share.
Sure. Yes. Yeah. There was a press release that went out. So in terms of the the 10,000 licenses, that's OpenAI Enterprise version ChatGPT. And then we're also rolling out. We've already last year rolled out Copilot Chat, and then we are rolling out Copilot M365 to a limited subset based on use cases. And then next year we'll start to do some work around agentic AI, as I said.
Right. Sounds very exciting, Elizabeth. I encourage anyone else to come off mute, or if there are any other questions for Elizabeth.
Or challenges which we can try and solve as a group. Happy to have a conversation.
True. Does anyone have any burning issues that we could tap into, both Elizabeth and the collective room? And I see Melissa with her hand up.
I always have burning issues. Elizabeth, thank you so much for your presentation. I will disclose I'm Chief Information Officer at University of Canberra, and in partnership with our DVC and our Chief People Officer, I'm currently building out our enterprise AI strategy, our roadmap. So a lot of what you have been talking about has just resonated with what we're doing, what we're right in the middle of. We don't have the capacity to give 10,000 staff OpenAI licenses, so we're playing a slightly different space. What I'm interested in, though, is your approach to ethical use of AI. So this is something that is that we're hearing back from both students and staff, that they don't want to be forced to use a tool. They worry about some of the environmental or the social impacts of the tools that are available, but also people not being sure around what are the lines that we don't want to cross. So what can we do and what can't we do? And then what are the ramifications if we continue to do things that we shouldn't do? We have been having some conversations around how this concept of the line that you don't cross obviously differs depending on the type of data that you're using, but also seems to be shifting over time. So 12 months ago, things that we thought we wouldn't do, we're sort of comfortable with now. Are you finding the same thing, that the goalposts move, the sand shift?
Absolutely, and it is quite tough because we've developed these ethical principles, but it's personal responsibility, and so people need to actually navigate that for themselves. Although that's why we've developed our AI assurance framework, which is actually publicly available on our website, and we've got the 7 elements that we ask people or help people work through, but every situation is different, and so it is quite hard. I think, I mean, that's why we've set up things like the SOS, and we've encouraged people to be in pilots and get people to open up if they've got problems. It's also why we've had a capability and a change-led approach, because we recognize that there's personal responsibility, but we need to educate people. So we need to give them that foundational baseline AI literacy so that they can make those informed decisions and bring themselves up to speed, and help them with that decision. But yeah, it's moving, and that's why we just have to keep the engagement and the communication open. Because the other thing is, we do have a sustainability policy, and we're making sure that it's that we are doing things in a sustainable way. But I guess that's one of the reasons why we've had such a deep engagement approach, because every day there's a new thing that comes up that we haven't planned for, and it's not my role or even our CIO's role to answer the question. So we need to have that leadership group that are constantly having the conversations and trying to work through things together.
It is a continuous thing, you're right. Every day there's something new, and we're also finding a lot of our existing corporate systems all of a sudden will offer AI functionality. And it's like, well, who is actually best placed to make decisions around whether we're comfortable to actually use that? Do we have the baseline knowledge? Do we understand what it's doing? So it's, yeah, it's nice to hear it's not just us who feel that it's like we're standing on a wobble board and the wind is blowing.
Yes, yes. And it's great to collaborate with other universities, because, sharing our learnings. And I mean, it's taken us, more than 18 months to get to this place. So we're actually moving quite slowly. Although it does seem like we've done a lot, but it's taken us a long time to get here.
From the outside, it looks like you're moving very smoothly in a very planned way that is very considered, and beautifully that you've got people at the centre of everything that you're doing, which is just phenomenal. I think it's really good leadership in the space.
Thank you.
Definitely. Bikram, you have a question?
Thanks. And thanks for a great presentation, Elizabeth. So I'm just reflecting on some comments that were made throughout today in particular, but also the question you raised, Mel, around sort of the ethics of utilizing or rolling out AI. You know, in a past role, I used to teach statistics, and I sort of watched a generation of students go through who learned to push buttons instead of understanding what the consequences were. And now we've got people in decision-making roles, making calls on data without understanding fundamental analytics. So how do you balance that? Because as you said, there's a personal responsibility here, but the pace of change is really quick and the convenience seems so tempting. So how do we balance this from your perspective?
That's a tough one. I mean, we are, as I said, I don't know if I have an answer to that. We're moving slowly, trying to equip people as much as possible. There's a lot of work that's being done, you know, in our faculties and in our education division to provide guidance. That's not something that we get involved in IT so much. We're providing the tools, but yeah, we're trying to ensure that there's enough guidance and enough opportunities to I mean, I guess that's also where the experimentation comes in on a small scale. So, you know, you might just, our first pilot, there was 20 people, and we had daily stand-ups to make sure that we were not making mistakes, we were not doing things, and went on for sort of a couple of months gathering that information. People being honest enough to say, hey, this happened and it really shouldn't have. And creating that, you know, that feedback loop. I don't know if that really answers your question, but
it's a curly question, and I appreciate you still sharing and you know, responding with that much detail. Thanks.
Elizabeth, we have a thank you in the chat from Ola. So she said your presentation was very interesting, and thank you for a clear and substantive presentation. So well done. And I certainly would echo that. It looks like everything is perfect. The duck feet are going very well, I think, under the water, Elizabeth. So well done. A last call out for any questions for Elizabeth? Presentation was brilliant. Thank you again. I hope we get to cross paths. I'll promise not to stalk you so hard next time. Yes, we really appreciate your time and your great presentation. So thank you, and you're very welcome to stay on for any other sessions that you like. So in regards to our sessions, we do have a break coming up now, which I don't know how everyone else feels, but I'm a bit peckish, not sure about the time zones where that sits, maybe hot chocolate time for some. So we have a break now until 1 p.m. where we will have a new link to connect. So if you should have that meeting invite in your calendar, and we'll be talking with Pete Brad about Miro, and he's going to show us some exciting things around the operating system that actually ships improvements. So that will be a good one to look forward to. So please go join your break, hang up from this one, join on the next one, and we'll see you all again soon. Thanks, everyone. Thanks again, Elizabeth.